What's up everyone? No, the title of this video isn't clickbait. No, we didn't make a mistake. Today, we're gonna talk about gaming on a Mac. Right here, right now, on Robeytech. I know, put the fruit away. Okay, when you think about gaming on a desktop or a laptop, you're probably thinking about one of those sweet PCs that we've built on the live stream, or like the newest Origin or Razer laptop with all that extra power from RGB lights and vapor chamber coolness and goodness. Now, while our hearts will always belong to PC gaming here on Robeytech, we do want to acknowledge how gaming might change in the future when it comes to playing on Apple laptops and desktops. Now, to do that, we need to jump in our Robeytech time machine and go back to the Worldwide Developer Conference in 2022 that happened earlier this year. And I'm really looking forward to what sort of cool special effects Connor came up to. See, we think that gaming on Macs may not be the meme fodder for too much longer, with like fun memes like this one and this one, which have brought us so much joy for so long. But with the advent of Apple's new M2 chip and their Metal 3 API for game development, this might be a change. See, for the longest time, gaming on a Mac has meant mobile games from the App Store or dating sims. Yeah, that's what we're gonna call them from Steam, or one of those Blizzard games, since they've continued to support like World of Warcraft, Diablo, and Hearthstone, both for Mac and also PC platforms. Or it meant running Boot Camp with Windows, or more recently an app called Parallels Desktop that allow you to run Windows applications on Mac OS. Now, Parallels does actually allow you to run any OS on Mac, as well as playing Windows games inside of a window on Mac without actually needing to reboot. But now, Apple's seemingly done like 180 on its views on gaming, and now that it's making its own powerful silicon for laptops and desktops. Now with the M1 and now the M2 chips, gaming on a Mac isn't quite the pipe dream that it once was. TechRadar spoke with Apple's Senior Director of GPU Software, the ASDGIPS, Jeremy Sandmel, about the prospect of Apple releasing a gaming MacBook, and his reply was, all MacBooks are actually gaming MacBooks. Now, this will probably strike a chord for us PC gaming enthusiasts as sacrilege, since gaming performance on a Mac has usually been utter trash, let's be honest, unless you drop the settings of any game to like potato settings. But with the huge leap in technological advancement of the M1, and now the added performance and efficiency of the M2, it might be time for us to seriously look at what gaming on a Mac will look like in the not so distant future. In fact, we've got a video coming up very soon. We're going to be heading over to an Apple store and purchasing a MacBook Air, and actually starting a whole series of these videos on gaming on Mac. Before I know people are like, what are you doing, Robey? But let's actually look at the hardware itself. See, the M1 chip was solid, especially for workflows like video editing and content creation. The added power was great, but the thing that caught the eye of game developers was the fact that it was a beefy enough CPU, but as an SoC or a system on chip, it gives developers a single set of hardware and performance it can reliably develop a gaming experience around. See, one of the biggest issues, now, I know for many PC gamers you wouldn't call this an issue, but for many game developers, the wide array of hardware combinations that make up the pool of PC gamers is actually an issue, and it's really expensive to do all the compatibility testing for all of those different hardware sets. I mean, come on. Raise your hand if you've gotten a message from Steam asking you to take part in their hardware survey, just so they have a better idea of what system specs their average users are using. See, Adrian Gurney, who's the producer and development manager for EVE Online, and if you wanna have some entertainment, just go search Robey 1 and EVE Online on Google. You're gonna learn a lot about my history and how much time that game used to take. A lot of history there. Anyway, he said that it's a real big advantage to have not only the CPU and GPU integrated, but also the memory being all in a single package. And you get better performance naturally because you haven't got all the interconnects between the devices. And when it comes to things like testing and how it looks and does it render correctly, it doesn't matter which Mac we've tested it on, because it's an M1 based architecture, which means you're gonna get the same across all of them. In fact, it's a whole lot like developing on like a PlayStation or an Xbox. And that's the thing that makes it so special. Now, I know for many PC guys, they're like, but that's what we hate about Mac. But in a lot of ways, that's what makes Mac super appealing for game developers with all this super powerful stuff. See, and that's what brings us to the biggest draw for Mac gaming in the future. the SoC nature of Apple's MacBook internals means that they can actually perform more like a console, which is what I was saying earlier, rather than a PC where you've got a laundry list of potential CPUs, RAM, GPUs, drivers, operating systems, and so on. It's one unified set of hardware that is consistent on how it behaves across the board. But here's the thing. Hardware is one thing. Users adopting Mac as a serious gaming platform requires commitment from developers first and foremost to have any hope of a future. So then let's enter Metal 3. It's actually Apple's new gaming API that's going to be the path that developers will take to make their games available natively on a Mac, not just ports after the PC version is done. Apple knows. And you're gonna laugh at this one, guys, but Apple actually knows that Apple Arcade and playing desktop version of iOS games ain't gonna cut it for the serious gamers. And to show how serious they are, they're actually taking a shot at gaming for real. See, Capcom will be developing Resident Evil Village natively for the Apple M1 and M2 setups. Now, aside from Resident Evil, also No Man's Sky is also getting a native app for Apple's M1 and M2 as well. And according to Apple, they've been getting increased traction from what Apple's hardware has to offer for game developers. I mean, if you think about it like this, if there's a driver issue, they go to Apple. If there's a chipset issue, they go to Apple. If there's an operating system, well, you can see where this is going. It's a lot like developing for Xbox and PlayStation again. They don't have to wait for NVIDIA or AMD to update drivers, or for, basically motherboard manufacturers to give new BIOSes, or CPU manufacturers to fix chipset issues. It's like a one-stop shop for all your troubleshooting needs. But look, that does mean that Apple has to commit to providing the level of support that gamers demand with companies like NVIDIA, who already released day one driver updates for new PC titles. And also, they're going to need Apple to optimize gameplay and settings for your hardware, just like Valve is doing with the Steam Deck. But let's take a look real quick at what the Metal 3 is actually capable of. See, new to Metal 3 is Metal Effects upscaling. Now, you can just add this to the laundry list of upscaling technologies like XeSS and FSR and DLSS, but similar to how those work, like NVIDIA, it allows games to intentionally render at a lower resolution and then leverage the GPU via deep learning to upscale the visuals so there's less of a strain on the GPU. And Apple's M1 and M2 should be able to do roughly the same using Metal 3's API. There's also a tool that Apple's providing developers that allows them to convert textures and shaders to metal textures and metal shaders. Now, it's not, sorry, remember, metal's the API. It doesn't mean like, hey, look, there's a cool floor marble texture, now it's metal. Or like, hey, look at that human and it just turns it, now he's metal. It's not for heavy metal, it's just texture swapping, sorry. Now, we won't go too far into the weeds here on what each of these features means, but Metal 3 will allow for some of these things, like faster resource loading. It uses offline shader compilation to improve game performance and reduce load times. Mesh shaders for more flexible culling and level of detail selection with more efficient geometry and shading. And a new ray tracing feature with Metal Ray Tracing. AKA, if you're a game developer and all the things I just said, you're like, oh wow, that's really cool. And those are things that we're doing with modern day games, not just from like 10 years ago, but actually stuff that we're doing with modern days games now. Now, aside from the hardware perspective, Apple is slowly increasing its support for peripheral options with controllers. Actually, earlier this year, iOS 16 beta users found out that it would support the Switch Pro controller. So now that Apple's hardware is finally catching up on the performance levels it needs to hit gaming, and with the prospect of more and more developers wanting to jump on board with an integrated system setup and a new API that not just ports their game to Mac, but it makes it built natively for the platform, the future is actually looking pretty bright for Mac users and that want to do more than just kind of edit videos on their computers. They're not just like, or they're like, look at me, I have a Mac, and I paid a lot of money just to look at email. And don't get this twisted. While yes, the library catalog for Mac isn't nearly as deep when it comes to AAA titles, it actually does have a pretty solid lineup as it stands, even without No Man's Sky and Resident Evil Village. You have games like Divinity Original Sin 2, EVE Online, Portal, Civilization, Disco Elysium, Hades, Stardew Valley, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and Rome Total War or the Total War series. They're actually some of the best games in their genre, and they're not only playable on Mac, but they manage to perform pretty dang well. Now, hold on. Here's the deal. Keep in mind that for laptop gaming on Mac, their titles are targeted at 1080p. And they do have like a baseline for 4K gaming with their Mac Studio, which is like in the future. We are looking forward to what's next in desktop and laptop gaming, considering you can now get a solid MacBook with an M1 or M2 chip for around the same price as your average gaming laptop and potentially get better performance. I know.
What?
So stay tuned right here for future Mac gaming updates as more and more titles become cross-platform. I know, I mean, it could be, hey, we have a Xbox, PlayStation, Mac, and PC version of the game. But anyway, guys, that is it for this week's gaming news, specifically Mac gaming news. And what did you think about the future of Mac gaming? What games do you think will come to the platform next? And here's the real question. What would it actually take for you to switch from a PC to a Mac for playing games? I would love to know the answer more than anything to that last one down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, make sure you hit that subscribe button, whip that like button, and nudge just ever so slightly that notification bell so you don't miss our next video, either on this or so many other subjects. Now, remember, we stream every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday over at twitch.tv/Robeytech and also over on youtube.com/Robeytech Live. And since you're here, I mean, you might as well follow us on all the socials. You can join me over at Robeytech on Twitter and Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, as well as join our Discord, who is amazing, by the way, over at discord.gg/Robeytech, where you can further conversation on these things and so much more with other tech and PC enthusiasts, and maybe some Mac guys as well. Anyway, we've got some awesome PC builds coming up. But after this video, what do you guys think? Are you excited about our new series where we're gonna actually go buy a MacBook and start playing games on it? And would you love to see stuff like that live? Let us know if you're interested in that and more, and we super look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks, guys.